During World War II, American aircraft didn't just fly, they controlled the skies. Built for speed, power, and precision, these machines were made to dominate. From intercepting bombers to breaking enemy formations, each played a key role in securing air superiority. Pilots relied on them not just to fight, but to survive. Some were fast and agile, and the others were rugged and relentless. Together, they formed the sharp edge of air combat. So, join us for today's video, as we're going to take a look at every single American deadliest aircraft used in World War II. North American P-51 Mustang. This beast emerged as the war in the air began to require more than just speed or firepower. What bombers truly needed was someone to stay with them, not for a few minutes, but across entire missions. Early Mustangs flew well at lower altitudes, but once the Merlin engine was installed, everything fell into place. The aircraft could climb, stay fast, and travel deep into enemy territory without having to turn back early. It carried 6 50 caliber machine guns and had the range to escort heavy bombers far beyond the point where other fighters dropped off. It was stable, handled well, and gave pilots the confidence to meet German interceptors without hesitation. Over time, its presence helped shift control of the skies, and it was like the backbone of American aircraft. Grumman F-6F Hellcat. This beast was never built to impress, but it does something that it wins. Introduced in 1943, it quickly became the backbone of America's naval air power. With a 2,000 horsepower engine and 6 50 caliber machine guns, it wasn't just well armed, it was reliable, rugged, and easy to handle in combat. Pilots didn't have to wrestle it. They flew it with confidence. In dogfights, it outmatched the Japanese Zero, not through elegance, but through raw performance and survivability. It could climb, dive, and absorb damage that would rip others apart. What made it stand out wasn't speed or sleek design, it was consistency. The aircraft accounted for more enemy kills than any other U.S. naval fighter, responsible for over 5,000 confirmed victories. Whether flying from carriers or island bases, it performed without fuss or drama. In the Pacific, the Hellcat wasn't there to show off. It was there to get the job done, and this beast did it. Lockheed P-38 Lightning. The P-38 didn't look like anything else in the war. Twin booms, twin engines, and a cockpit suspended between them. It had a design that wasn't about aesthetics. It was about results. The central firepower, 4 machine guns and a cannon, meant no convergence issues, just clean, direct hits. Fast at altitude and steady in a dive, it didn't shake or stall under pressure. Its long range gave it an edge in the Pacific, where distance was everything. Pilots flew it deep into enemy territory and brought it back in one piece. It wasn't limited to one role. It escorted bombers, intercepted fighters, took photos, and carried out precision strikes. Richard Bong and Thomas Maguire, America's top-scoring aces, both flew it. One mission even brought down Admiral Yamamoto's plane. That wasn't luck. It was a tool doing exactly what it was made for, reaching the enemy first and hitting with accuracy. Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. The Thunderbolt looked oversized. At first glance, it seemed too heavy to fight. But in the sky, it proved everyone wrong. Powered by a massive radial engine and packed with 8 machine guns, it brought a mix of durability and firepower few others matched. In high-altitude missions over Europe, it stayed with bombers, picked off interceptors, and returned covered in damage, but not defeated. Its speed in a dive made it difficult to chase. On the ground, It dropped bombs and fired rockets with the kind of weight few single-engine fighters could carry. It wasn't agile in a turn, but it didn't need to be. The aircraft survived direct hits and still brought pilots home. Aerial kill ratios proved their value, but pilots remembered how often they saved their lives. When others couldn't take the punishment, the P-47 kept flying. It wasn't just a fighter, it was a survivor. Vought F-4U Corsair. The F-4U Corsair wasn't designed to please engineers, it was designed to give pilots an edge. With its powerful radial engine and wide wingspan, it flew fast, hit hard, and left little room for error. Its speed and firepower made it dangerous in the air, but early landing issues kept it off carriers at first. That didn't slow it down. Marine squadrons took it to island airstrips and began tearing through Japanese defenses. Once refined, it returned to carrier decks, proving its worth on every front. Its nickname, Whistling Death, wasn't propaganda. It came from those who faced it in combat. It earned an 11-to-1 kill ratio, and unlike many wartime aircraft, it continued serving after the war ended. Pilots trusted it for good reason. It didn't promise perfection. It delivered performance, even in the most hostile conditions. There wasn't much flash. There were just results, and they were undeniable. Bell P-39 Era Cobra. This beast was a fighter that never fit neatly into expectations, yet it proved its worth when used the right way. Its engine sat behind the pilot, giving the aircraft a heavy nose and room for a powerful cannon firing straight through the propeller. That setup made it effective in close combat, where accuracy mattered more than altitude. The real limitation came higher up. Without a turbo supercharger, performance dropped sharply, which kept it from excelling over Western Europe. At lower and medium altitudes, however, it became dangerous. Soviet pilots understood this better than anyone, flying it aggressively in head-on attacks and tight engagements where the Era Cobra's firepower decided fights quickly. It demanded discipline because mistakes could turn serious fast, but when flown properly, it rewarded confidence. The P-39 was not a universal solution, yet it dominated where air battles stayed low. In those conditions, it delivered results that other fighters could not. Curtiss P-40 Warhawk. The P-40 Warhawk was not designed to dominate at high altitude, but it stayed in service because it worked where conditions were rough and options were limited. It performed best at lower altitudes, which made it useful in North Africa, the Pacific, and China, where most air engagements happened close to the ground. The engine was basic, the design was simple, and the aircraft could handle damage without falling apart. It carried multiple machine guns and delivered reliable firepower during escort and ground support missions. Though it lacked the speed and climb rate of its German or Japanese counterparts, it was dependable in places where even basic maintenance was a challenge. American and Allied pilots flew it in the early years because they had no alternatives. It was not the most advanced aircraft in the war, but it held the line until better tools arrived. That alone made its presence essential. Northrop P-61 Black Widow. The P-61 Black Widow was built specifically for night operations and gave the U.S. military a way to engage enemy aircraft after dark without depending on guesswork. It carried onboard radar, allowing the crew to track targets through cloud cover or in total darkness. The aircraft was large, with 2 engines and enough weight to carry both firepower and a 3-person crew. Armed with 4 20mm cannons and 4 50 caliber machine guns, it could bring down heavy bombers with a single pass. Pilots, radar operators, and gunners worked together to spot and strike targets before they could react. It entered combat late in the war, but quickly proved itself effective in both Europe and the Pacific. While other fighters focused on daytime missions, the Black Widow handled what came through at night. It operated quietly, without recognition, but gave Allied forces a reliable edge when visibility offered no advantage. Grumman F-4F Wildcat. The F-4F Wildcat was never the fastest or most maneuverable fighter in the Pacific, but during the early war, it was all that American carrier pilots had. Japanese Zeros could outturn and outrun it, but the Wildcat could absorb damage, stay controllable, and continue fighting. Its structure was solid, its systems were durable, and pilots quickly adapted by developing new tactics suited to its strengths. The aircraft carried 650 caliber machine guns and used diving attacks and teamwork to survive engagements. It was not ideal, but it kept flying, and that mattered. At battles like Coral Sea, Midway, and Guadalcanal, it gave the Navy and Marine Corps enough presence in the air to hold positions and buy time. Newer aircraft eventually replaced it, but until then, the Wildcat carried the weight of defense almost entirely on its own. It was not perfect, but it stayed in the air when nothing else could. Lockheed P-80 Shooting Star. The P-80 Shooting Star was developed during the final stages of World War II and became the first operational jet fighter built in the United States. It did not enter the war early enough to see significant combat, but its presence marked the beginning of a new phase in American air power. The aircraft featured a single jet engine, clean lines, and straight wings, and it flew faster than any piston engine fighter in service. Armed with 650 caliber machine guns, it carried the same firepower as many of its predecessors, but delivered it with more speed and smoother control at low and medium altitudes. Although it arrived too late to influence outcomes in Europe or the Pacific, it served as a foundation for future jet designs. It transitioned into the post-war years and remained in use during the Korean War. The P-80 did not win the war, but it pointed clearly to what came next. Grumman F-8F. Bearcat. The Bearcat showed up late, but it didn't waste time proving a point. Grumman built it light, fast, and tuned to climb like nothing else. Using the same engine as the Hellcat, but wrapped in a smaller frame, it left everything behind the moment it left the deck. It handled tightly, felt solid on approach, and took rough carrier landings in stride. For a piston engine fighter, it flew like it wanted to race jets. While it missed combat in Djibouti, it didn't sit idle. Navy squadrons flew it into the post-war years, and airshow pilots kept squeezing every ounce of speed out of it long after. In the hands of the Blue Angels, it made an impression. It wasn't just another late-war aircraft. It was Grumman's last word in prop-driven design. Short career or not, the Bearcat stood as one of the most refined carrier fighters to ever launch from a deck. P-63 King Cobra. The P-63 wasn't loud about what it did, but it fixed the flaws its predecessor couldn't hide. Bell kept the mid-engine layout, but cleaned up the rest. It flew steadier, pulled harder, and finally gave pilots the kind of handling they'd asked for all along. It didn't make the US roster, but it found its place overseas. Soviet squadrons flew it day in, day out, often in rough weather and over long ranges. That 37mm cannon wasn't just for looks. It gave it serious stopping power, and with stronger armor and better weight balance, it held its own in a tight spot. While it wasn't built to turn heads, it stayed reliable, kept pace with demands, and earned a reputation where it counted. No drama, no glory stories, just a fighter that showed up, got to work, and flew home more often than not. That, in the end, is what made it matter. Grumman F-8F Bearcat. The Bearcat arrived late, but it didn't show up quietly. Built lighter, smaller, And sharper than its predecessor, the Hellcat, this thing was made to climb like a rocket. It wrapped the same powerful engine in a much leaner frame, which gave it speed and responsiveness few others could match. Even before the first one flew, Grumman's team was aiming for raw acceleration, something fast enough to launch off small escort carriers, yet still hit hard. It had no time to see major combat before the war ended, but pilots who flew it remembered it well. Tight handling, blistering takeoffs, and a short fuse if you weren't careful. It joined the Blue Angels, broke climb records, and even made its mark on air racing long after retirement. Some saw it as the best piston engine fighter never to fight a war. It came too late for battle, but not too late to make history. LP-63, King Cobra. The King Cobra had potential, but never got its shot in American skies. Built as a successor to the P-39 era Cobra, it fixed what pilots hated: more power, better wings, and cleaner handling. But the U.S. Army Air Forces passed. Instead, the Soviets took nearly all of them, flying them hard and fast through the Eastern Front and into the war's final days. The plane had bite, a 37mm cannon firing straight through the propeller hub, a top-end roll rate that beat most Allied fighters, and enough armor to keep pilots breathing. It flew low, stayed tough, and handled dogfights better than its odd looks suggested. Some saw action in Korea, and others ended up in French and Vietnamese hands, but the King Cobra's prime was Soviet. In the end, it never became the warhorse it could have been for the US. But in the right hands, it still earned respect. It wasn't flashy, but it got the job done. P-66 Vanguard, the Vultee P-66, started as an export fighter for Sweden, but shifting wartime priorities kept it on American soil. Once the US entered the war, the aircraft was redesignated and held back for training and second-line duties. Later, most were shipped to China under Lend-Lease, arriving late and in uneven condition. Many were damaged or written off before they ever flew. A few reached frontline Chinese squadrons, but their combat record was limited. The P-66 handled well in calm air, but it lacked durability and struggled against the faster, tighter-turning Japanese fighters. Some were even mistaken for enemy aircraft and shot down by friendly forces. Still, it offered something when few options were available. As newer fighters arrived, most P-66 were pushed aside. By war's end, surviving examples were stored away, some still crated, waiting for a fight that never came. The Vanguard story is quiet, but not without purpose. What do you think about these American deadliest aircraft? Well, let us know in the comments below. We hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, then like, share, and subscribe. We'll catch you very soon.